Dreading going to work tomorrow? At least you didn't piss off a cancer patient that you abused and now you're in a game for your life. Hey there, welcome to another edition of the Sunday Scaries. I'm your host Mike, and today we're going to be talking about Saw X. Now, I know a lot of people are not fans of the Saw series, and I completely understand if you're not. But please tune in and listen anyways. You won't mind if I spoil a few things if you're not a huge fan of the series. I know it's a little gory for some people, or at least they think it's gory in some of the previous films that actually aren't as bad as people think. And for people that have not seen Saw X, please know there'll be some spoilers in this. And the main reason is I won't spoil the ending of this movie, but just by talking about Saw X, it spoils a lot of the rest of the franchise, especially the first movie, because the first movie is all based on not knowing who the killer is. So if you've never seen the Saw series and you don't want to miss out on some of the surprises in the franchise, you know, please pause and go and watch a few of the films and then come back here. But this film is a prequel to the original and really all of the films in the series. With that said, let's get into the movie. Saw X came out last year, and I'm trying to talk about a little bit newer movie. I know my channel's been mostly about older films, but this is a relatively new film, and it kind of took, I think, most of the horror community by surprise because the Saw franchise has been sort of on life support. After, I would say, the third movie, a lot of them got really stale. They went over the top with just gore. The series has always prided itself on having a twist at the end of the movie, but they just kind of got a little lame, and the killer that took over the series, I don't think a lot of people really connected to like the original killer, and for those who don't know, the Saw series is about a person named John Kramer, and he is a cancer patient, and he has this near-death experience and realizes he never really appreciated his life until after he had cancer. And so he wants to start trying to get people to appreciate their lives who are living their lives poorly, in his opinion. And so he creates these traps and puts people in games for their lives where if they lose, they do die. And a lot of times they have to do horrific things to themselves. And he develops this weird moral code of his kind of own making and wants to leave this legacy. So this movie takes place before the first movie, and he has already started his work and the killer Jigsaw that the media calls him, and he never actually adopted that name, but the media calls him Jigsaw, so that would be the slasher, quote unquote slasher's name. He started his work, and he's struggling though because he's terminally ill with this cancer. He knows he's gonna die. He already has a couple of apprentices that he's already started to mentor, but he's trying desperately to cling on to life so he can finish his work because he has all these plans and he's trying to inspire the world through these traps to appreciate your life. And again, it's a very interesting moral code because he's murdered a lot of people by doing so, even though he doesn't really view it as murder. He views it as them failing the tests and they didn't make the choices to live. But he's desperately trying to cling to life, and the film tackles this whole cancer patients are getting abused by the medical system. You know, insurance is very expensive. A lot of people don't want to work on him because he's a high-risk patient. And he decides through this cancer support group that he's going to try this black market company down in Mexico. And they're claiming that the reason that people don't want to use their cancer cure is because the pharmaceutical companies are suppressing this new surgery that they've developed and technique. And so, you know, being like anybody who is facing death, you'll believe what you want to hear if you think it means you're going to live. And he goes down there, he pays them a ton of money, and you know, he has this surgery, and pretty much a day later, 2 days later, you know, he wakes up and he takes off his bandages and no one actually did any surgery to him. And it turns out the whole thing's a scam. And so what he decides to do is put everyone that was involved into a game and trap them and put them in a game for their life. Still hoping, though, ironically, that they will pass the test and live. And that's the general plot of this whole film, and I won't get into too much more. I'm not trying to spoil this movie. The twist ending at the end is probably, I would say, minor compared to other Saw films, but total fun. Definitely go check it out if you're a fan of this franchise. I was pleasantly surprised because I don't think I've really enjoyed a Saw film since the third movie, and this is the 10th. So I've been a huge fan of the Saw franchise since I was in high school. The first one came out and just blew me and my friends' minds away with the twist ending. And then the second one came out and the third, and we just thought Jigsaw was the most interesting villain because he wasn't like really evil. He's trying to help people, and he has this weird psychology and this belief system, and almost like he's trying to make another religion in his, his mind or the people around him's mind. But at the same time, it's wrong. And we were just always fascinated because most of the other slashers are pretty one-dimensional, and this guy is definitely very layered. And there was always this element you felt bad for him because he had cancer. He had this horrible brain tumor. And this one is really the first one, though, where you don't feel that bad for the victims. And granted, I still don't think they deserve to be murdered, but because they're ripping off cancer patients and taking tens of thousands of dollars from the cancer patients, not just Jigsaw, they deserve some kind of punishment, right? And they definitely deserve to get caught and for this to stop. It's a horrible scam. And so once John gets them all in a game and it's revealed he's Jigsaw, and man, do they start, crapping their pantses. But it gets really interesting. And you're rooting for him, and in other movies you sort of are, but it's wrong. And this one, you're rooting for him, and it's like 25% it's wrong, 75% you're kind of rooting for him. And I'd say normally that's flipped. And I think that's really creative, and I'm surprised it took 10 movies to really figure out a way to make John the hero. And that's a lot of fun in this film. I will say this, on a scale of goriness, is more on the high end for a Saw movie. I still contest the original is not that bloody, and I think it gets overhyped by the rest of the franchise. I do think a lot of the franchise, especially after the third movie, just relied on gore and not real creative plots. This one has one of the best plots. This is one of the best stories I've seen in the Saw franchise. But I will say there's one particular scene that's a little over the top, and I have a high tolerance of gore, but I would fast forward. So just saying that. I've heard other people that review movies say, horror is kind of like spice, and it's just what's your, level that you can handle. If it was out of 10, I'm probably like an 8.5, but this one definitely pushed that 10 tier that I can't even cross. And I know the person I was watching it with, we both were looking away. Anyways, I do preface that if you're trying to watch the movie, there's one scene that's just ridiculously over the top, but the rest of the movie I think is pretty manageable. I think it's a lot of fun. It's really interesting plot, and there's some themes I'm going to dive into. And the first theme that this film tackles that the rest of the series always has an undertone of, but never fully jumps in, not quite like this one, is the scariness of having cancer and the whole medical system, and the fact that there's a good chance you're going to die, and you have this really intimidating medical system that you don't feel like is really there to help you. And it's kind of an obstacle just to get treatment, especially if you have a brain tumor like John does in this film, which is just really tragic. It's a really scary thing, and the black market dealers prey on people, saying, hey, the pharmaceutical companies, they don't want to help you. They make a fortune off you. Like, why would they want a treatment that actually cures all forms of cancer? This is a huge industry. And so unlike a lot of horror movies that they're just relying on, the blood, the gore, the slashers, the, fear for your life in terms of someone trying to take it from you, this is cancer. And it's something that's probably impacted everybody who's watching this video. I think almost everyone has known someone that's had cancer. You probably know someone that's died of cancer. It's a very common disease, granted different types. It really is just terrifying. And the whole medical system is part of why it's so scary. You can't just get the treatment to get help sometimes. There's medical costs. There's doctors and politics that don't want to help you, especially this is an older man, there's some things that come with that. This movie does a really good tackling that theme, and that's not necessarily a traditional horror angle that movies go for. Now, the second big theme in this is, and this is sort of the core of the Saw series, is taking justice into your own hand. John creates his own belief system, his own moral system, and creates this whole religion really of you need to go into a game and prove that you appreciate life in order to actually get that appreciation. You will never really appreciate your life until you're in a near-death situation. And so he takes justice into his own hands and puts people in these games, and against their will, they have to choose to live or die. Additionally, you know, he has been abused in this movie, and very wrongfully. Like, these people are horrible what they did, but he decides to put them in a game. And granted, you know, he does, you can tell, want them to survive, but he also targeted these people out of vengeance too. And, you know, that's pretty intense. And at the very end, after the twist, there's actually a little nod to someone else who was a part of this that you think kind of got away. But, you know, it comes back to him too. I mean, the system that they use to lure in cancer patients is insane. If you start at the beginning of the film and get, you know, all the way to the end. It's very wrong to take justice into your own hands. And, you know, only God should really decide who lives or dies. Or if you don't believe in God, you know, Mother Nature, or, but, you know, not an individual who's breaking the laws of probably every country. Granted, I'm not educated on every legal system, but I'm pretty sure this is illegal in every country. So there's that whole angle and theme to this film. And then another really interesting angle is the fear of legacy. You know, John is going to die. And, you know, he has an apprentice in this film, spoilers. It's Amanda, who, you know, she was in the first couple of Saw films, and she's a fan favorite. But he's trying to survive long enough to leave the blueprint to everything he envisions, this movement he's creating. And he wants her to take over for him. But he has this fear of he's not going to have enough time to do it, and people won't remember him. It's almost like being remembered is his version of immortality, and he never says that, and that's kind of a theme in some other films outside of the Saw franchise. He very much is scared that his work will not be remembered, and that's his biggest thing. He wants his work to survive, and that's going to be his legacy. And I think everybody, especially when you're getting close, if you're older, getting close to the end of your life, you think about your legacy. How will people remember you? And people, you know, they have their legacy move on in different ways. You know, a lot of people, it's through their children. Some of people is through their work. I know plenty of people that work well into their 70s just because they love their work. They find meaning in it. But, you know, that's been a common theme, I think, throughout human history of just, you know, you want to be remembered for something, and you want people to remember you long after you're gone. All right, guys, so let's get in the rankings. And, you know, my only real complaint in this film, and it's a little nitpicky, is just, you know, Tobin Bell and Shanine Smith, who, you know, they're the two main killers in this. Because it's a prequel, but it's been so many years since the Saw series has started, they look older than they should be in this film, and there's really no way around that. And it's actually funny, in some of the other Saw films, which they have flashbacks, they try to make Tobin Bell look younger wearing a backwards hat, but that totally would not work in this movie. We're just way past that, and he was in the movie way too much in order to be able to just wear a backwards hat. Plus he had surgery on his head, or thought he had surgery on his head at one point. But anyways, so my overall ranking for this film, though, is a 4.5 out of 5. You know, it's a really good film. This is arguably the best Saw film that's ever been made. I'd really have to think about that. I have not done a Saw ranking. I probably will do one at some point. I don't think I'm going to review all the film series, but, you know, I'll probably eventually do the original and the second one and the third one, because I really think the first trilogy is just so good. But again, 4.5 out of 5 as far as the overall ranking of this film. They did a really good job. It's well paced. I can't find too many holes other than, you know, the actors. They look a lot older than they should be in this movie, and what are you gonna do? You can't beat Father Time. And my overall fun rating, I would also say a 4.5 out of 5. You know, it was up there. Like, I had a ton of fun with this movie. Besides the one scene that, like I said, I have to fast forward again just because it was a little too much even for me. I really did like this movie. I thought it was deeply philosophical, and I got a lot out of it. And I was really bummed the night I watched it. with my buddy at his house. I was kind of rushing home to get home to my wife, but even after it was over, the first thing my buddy said was, I wish you could stay longer because I really want to talk about this. And all right, guys, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate all your support. Please subscribe and like if you haven't already, and please leave a comment too. If you've seen the Saw series and if you've seen this movie, let me know kind of how you liked it. Did you think it was a good entry to the series? And what did you think about some of the themes in the movie? And were there themes that you got out of it too that I didn't talk about? I know there was a lot more, but I kind of didn't want to revisit some of the themes in previous movies and just focus on this one. But let me know what you think, and please refer my channel to a friend, as always, if know somebody that's really interested in this type of genre. And with that said, all I know is at least I'm not in a game for my life tomorrow.